Mothers are the queens of the castle, but let's be real, it's not all ball gowns and glass slippers.
On this podcast, we're giving you a peek behind the throne at the privilege and responsibility of wearing the crown. My name is Helen Hope Kimbrough, and I'm a proud wife and mom of 2 adult sons.
And I'm Charlita Hatch, a proud wife, married to my high school sweetheart, and a proud mom to 2 little ones. Get ready as we share jewels with each other
and you around all things connected to motherhood. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 4 of Behind the Throne podcast. So excited to be back on the mic with you, and definitely have missed you and missed hearing from you. And so many people have been asking, where are you? So I want you to know that we're back and we're starting this new season, and we're starting it with a new and important topic, which is around voting. So if you see my shirt, I'm reflecting voting today because it's such an important topic. And we have an expert in the room, ladies and gentlemen, on the podcast. We have Jamila Green.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing, Helen?
Good. She's been out in the community making certain that this topic is top of mind, and also just making certain that there is just awareness and education involved, because she wants to make certain that you're equipped.
Right.
And I think this is actually a personal and a professional mission for you. And so excited to have you join us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me on the podcast, Helen. This is a great opportunity, and I love the work that you already do in the community. I've already poured all the flowers on you. I'll continually pour the flowers on you, but thank you.
Thank you. Well, before we get started, I would love for you to introduce yourself so that everyone knows who you are. And then we'll also just after that, just share a little bit about how we know each other.
Of course. So like Helen said, my name is Jamila Green, and I am the Community Engagement Manager for YWCA Central Carolinas here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm also a West Charlotte native. I always make sure I drive that point home. So Charlotte is more than just a city to me. It's truly home. It's truly home. And I'm grateful for my West Charlotte roots and what I've learned just being a Charlottean over the past few years, and the work in the community that I can do, and all the things. And I always shout out my mama and my daddy. Thank y'all for raising me to be the being that I am right now.
I love
do the work I do.
I love that.
Yes.
Well, awesome. And then there is a synergy that we also have. I think we've known each other for at least 5 or 6 years.
Yes, at this point.
Yeah. So Jamila and I got an opportunity to be in a 2-day seminar for the Racial Equity Institute, where we learned about race and how race was formed. And that experience was definitely one that was educational, but also mind-blowing. And I left there feeling that everyone actually needs to take that training from school level on up.
I agree.
So what are your thoughts about that?
I agree. And it just kind of set as the basis. It set the tone for a lot of us in the work that we do, and kind of energized us around this work, around equity, and really understanding the systems at play when it comes to a lot of the inequities that are happening in our world. So if you have the chance to take it, I agree. I feel like everybody should take it, no matter where you land, whether you're corporate, you're in the nonprofit sector, you're in education, you're a stay-at-home mom, all the things. A student. They need a child version, a youth version of it.
Yes.
The earlier, the better, I think. So, yeah.
Agreed. And then we also found out that we go to the same church.
We do. we go to the same church.
Yeah. So I was like, there's some synergies around what we do. So it's been good seeing you lift up community the way that you do, and also take the challenge that the Racial Equity Institute shared with us and really encouraged us to take, like, how are you going to proceed and do this work? And so that leads us to our topic around voting.
Yes,
voting, because it's one where I don't know anything any different other than what my parents, encouraged and shared around voting, and the seriousness of it. So serious that both of my parents, would say, okay, it's time to vote, or they would announce when they were voting. So I think when you announce that you're voting with your children, and even with my own sons, I just took them with me to the voting booths.
Correct.
So that they would know that this is going to be something that you're going to continue to carry on, that this just doesn't stop here.
Mm-hmm.
And so much is impressed upon us through our ancestors about, encouraging us to vote.
Correct.
That we must carry that torch forward. We have to. We can't stop. And so I would love to know what's your earliest memory of voting, and how was it, introduced to you and carried out in your home?
I think when you brought up your sons going with you to vote, that reminded me of my grandmother. I call her Grandmere, so I think that's French or some amalgamation of French, Creole, Charleston mix, whatever. But my grandmother, she would take me with her to early vote at East Stonewall, right in West Charlotte, at the precinct. And I remember, maybe not, of course, going to the polls with her, but I remember the kids voting section and it being a thing for me to make sure, like, I went with her because I knew I was going to go get my sticker. You got to get your sticker. Got to get your I voted sticker, but I got to kids vote. Kids vote is a big deal. So I was able to get my sticker and I was able to color, but she set a tone early, and my parents did too, that regardless of what is happening, we take a pause for the cause and we go ahead and vote. And she was not physically able to drive or walk, but she always made arrangements to make sure we made our way to East Stonewall. And she took me with her to early vote. And ever since then, I knew that clearly this is a big deal. When I turn a certain age, I get to really go in the big dog booth. And when I get to the big dog booth, I can really ring off.
Your vote will count.
My vote will count. Kids vote, I don't know what we might have been voting for hot dogs or pizza. I don't know. I don't remember, but we colored and we got a sticker. But that's probably my earliest memories of not even really voting, truly voting, but knowing this is a practice that we do in our home, and it's important that you do it too.
Yeah. And a story that I actually have, which is, around my mom, you're talking about Grandmere. I remember when it was time to vote in the 2020 election. And so COVID was around that time. Yes. And it was really the first time that both of my parents had done a mail-in ballot.
Oh, yeah.
And my mom was so uneasy about that mail-in ballot that she called what is the elections office
North Carolina Board of Elections.
Yeah, Board of Elections every day. Do you have my ballot?
Okay.
Do you have my vote? So she was going to make certain that her vote was there and present to a point where they knew that this is Helen's mom calling again, sharing that it's time.
Making sure.
I got to make certain that my vote is in there. So she is not playing, which I think the story that she shares is funny, but it also just shares the seriousness of it and that you can't take it for granted. And she's not doing that. So I wanted to just kind of also share that with our audience today as well.
Real.
Now, one of the things that I did share earlier is that you've been focused on voter awareness and education as a part of your role, specifically with the YWCA Central Carolinas. But I also think it's like a personal, mission for you. So what drives this motivation?
Ooh, goodness gracious. I think YWCA, our mission is to eliminate racism and empower women. And when we look at the intersecting identities that sit at the center of our mission, we look at BIPOC women. And oftentimes, many of the issues that we are voting about or the leaders we're looking to help solve and remedy these issues, it's imperative that we actually vote when it comes to those specific issues that we know affect BIPOC women specifically, or women that look like me and women that look like you. So when we talk about reproductive justice, oftentimes Black and brown women are the ones that are at the, they're most impacted. Correct. Healthcare, we look at education. I look at the criminalization of Black and brown girls in schools. Their rates of suspension are much higher than Black and brown boys. So why is that? What work is being done around that? What are our politicians and leaders doing that? So it's imperative that from a mission standpoint as an organization, that we are charging citizens and community members to really get active in this election season when it comes to researching what leaders really line up with the ideas that are important to you. But also if you are, you with us with YWCA, then what leaders are actually lining up with a lot of the things that we believe in. So it's important. And from a personal standpoint, reproductive justice and reproductive health is extremely important to me. I do have endometriosis. And so with that, there was a lot of different care things that came up, especially during the pandemic. And for me, it's important that our leaders really speak to, funding resources for Black and brown women, research around endometriosis, the PCOS, Black maternal health, all of those different things, fertility, that oftentimes we're impacted most. Black and brown women are impacted most. And so it just made the most sense that I take a true interest in this and really just do the research around what leaders, like I said, what leaders are lining up with the things that matter to me most. And like your shirt says, like, my ancestors fought and died for this right. If anything, I'm the most American I could possibly be in this moment. Okay. So the prayers of my ancestors, the work, all the different things. If I don't vote, the sacrifices, that's the biggest thing. So for me not to take a true interest in this, I think I would be doing a disservice to those people that really fought for it. And so, and at the same breath, I am also charged with holding our leaders accountable as well. So we're not going to just go be down for everything now. Because I got questions and I think you need to answer them. And so I'm going to hold leadership accountable from the local to the federal level. So,
and I'm glad you mentioned local, state, federal, because I feel like there's always a push around, our federal elected officials. And that really is when we start talking about the seriousness of voting. But what I really want people to know is it's your local, government officials that you really need to be looking at. So anything that's, relating to your neighborhood or to your schools or to your environment, that's really the local construct of politics, right? And then state also has something that you need to be viewing and looking at too, because what they do on the state level will sometimes pass down to the local level. And so I definitely feel that there needs to be more education and fortitude around our local and state elections as well as federal. Because I do feel that we lose momentum.
We do.
And I love it when they look at my voting record here and other places, like they already know this girl doesn't miss an opportunity to vote.
And won't.
And won't, like, oh, yes, that's why you're sending me all of the text messages and all of the emails, because I'm in the voting booth. So that's important too. And important. It's so, we have to make certain that we do that work justice as well. So another question that I really wanted to ask is, for those who say that voting doesn't matter, I mean, we hear it all the time. We hear it, from young people. We hear it from people who said I voted once or, nothing ended up materializing the way that I wanted it to. So at this time, I just don't see a benefit to voting. So I would like to know, how should we reframe that conversation?
Such a good question. Myself and my colleague Reagan from the League of Women Voters, we've actually been doing sessions with some of the freshman students at Johnson C. Smith around voter education. And so it's been extremely eye-opening to have some just like open dialogue with the students. And we had one particular student actually say, raise their hand and openly say, like, I don't know why, voting is even an important thing, the way I was raised. my parents used to say, it's no point in voting. Nothing's going to happen. Nobody in my family votes. That's just not something we do. So unlike, our upbringings where we saw the importance of voting, we also have to come to the reality that some people are other upbringings, may not have had that. And first, when those conversations come up, I think it's important that we take time to listen. I think a lot of times, especially the diehard, we gonna vote people.
And I appreciate the honesty that she even raised her hand to say, this is my perspective and opinion around it. Yep.
And it's important that we make space for that. And so when she said that, we were like, I understand your perspective. I know that sometimes you feel like you just throwing something out there and hoping that something happens and it doesn't happen. Like you said, it may not, materialize the way you hope. But we just want to make sure you understand, like, from your background, understanding your history, and what your ancestors fought and died for, of course. But also, along with voting, there are so many other ways to become more civically engaged. Finding other ways to not only say, okay, I did my vote thing and I'm done. I think community-wide, we all need to think about, okay, we voted, but what else can we do to really engage our community in things that matter? How can we support our community? How can we be a voice for our community? How are we working with other stakeholders in our community to create change too? So when she did say that, we did have that open conversation with her, like, voting doesn't have to be the end all be all. That's one piece.
Yes.
But there are other ways that you can be just as engaged in your community and really fight for change. And we know there's systemic things at play. So we need you to vote because there's some systemic things that need to be undone and all those different types of things. And the beauty of that conversation was at the end of the session, she felt comfortable enough to actually register to vote.
Wow.
And she wanted to register to vote in her hometown, which is another space in North Carolina. Because she said she wanted to set a tone for her family. And so, when you create space for those conversations and really like have an open dialogue, like, I get it, sis. I understand, sis. Then you never know what'll go. Because we were not expecting her to register to vote at the end, but she did.
I love that.
So
I love that. And you made her feel comfortable. And I like this multi-gen conversation that we're having because, I'm from a different generation. It was also important to have your voice here because you represent a different generation. And then the students that you are, involved with, they're also, our leaders for tomorrow and the future. And so it's also one where we have to provide a blueprint.
Correct.
Provide space for a conversation. For disagreeing as well, so that we can kind of center things in different ways. And so I'm appreciative of that question because I've been talking to students as well from different colleges, and something that I've heard is we're not trying to be like our ancestors. And I was like, wait, what? And
Interesting.
And I said, well, where is this coming from?
Correct.
But again, I'm glad that that comment was shared because I was like, so what is it about the ancestors that you are not wanting to do?
Correct.
And it was, I don't feel like we have to say yes, sir, or, no, sir, or yes, ma'am, or feel subservient and all of those things, right? And I would say most people today would actually say, yeah, we definitely don't want to be in those same places. But if you don't vote, there is a potential that you could be in those places again, right? But I just said, well, even the fact that you can have that thought is off of the backs of someone who couldn't have that thought. And 100%. So that also lets you know that there was their sacrifice that allows you to be able to move in spaces and to think the thoughts that you have and to act upon them the way that you do. So let's have that conversation. And then I also apologized and said, maybe we haven't done a great job in explaining like different areas of government to you and the importance around that.
That's good.
And so let's have those discussions, right? as well. So if you talk about education, so let's look at the school board because they have to be voted on as well. And if there's something that you are interested in around that, we have to have conversations about that. And so let's have more conversations and dialogue around that too.
So important.
Yeah,
Extremely.
agreed. I wanted to talk about this one program that you're doing, and I think it's still at Johnson C. Smith.
Yep.
I like the fact that you all did a trivia challenge. I was like, wait, what? And the trivia challenge is called Are You Election Ready?
Yes.
And I just said, okay, demonstrative, right? That's declarative. Are you election ready?
Straight to the point.
Straight to the point. So why has the YWCA Central Carolinas taken up this cause?
And we had to gamify it. YWCA USA in general, we always have this initiative each year called Get Out the Vote. And so with this initiative, it charges associations across the country to actively get involved in voter education, really mobilize community members, engage and activate them. And for me, I always like to create and be creative. And that's one thing. It's on my little LinkedIn thing. I think I put creative or something fun in your little bio part or whatever. But one thing about me is I love to create opportunities where, like you spoke about, this multi-generational kind of conversation can happen. And I know one thing we can do is just make civics fun.
Yeah.
And it's hard to make civics sexy because it's not sexy all the time, but it's super important that we have conversations around it. And I was talking to my colleague, Reagan, at League of Women Voters. And I was like, Reagan, we need to do something where we get people involved and more fun. And she was having some conversations with our friend at the Charlotte Post, Herb White, also. So we collaborated with Herb as well. And we were like, what about a trivia? We call it Trivia for Change. And we get people, in the room. We have a little kind of game night thing. We'll serve food. We'll do all the things. And we thought that was probably the best way for us to really make it more approachable for folks to know that, yes, this is serious, but there's ways that we can learn more about it in a more fun way. And so we had the event last night at Johnson C. Smith in their library, and it was awesome. We had food catered by a Black woman-owned business because we want to make sure we drive that point home. We really support those businesses. But myself, along with Herb and Reagan, all, we're game show hosts. I even had the game show music.
Oh, okay.
I said I had to put on a little, I don't know, Price is Right music just to really get the people going. You get in a mindset. But we had 4 different rounds. The first round was on just general voting and election kind of trivia. So around like, when does early voting start?
Okay.
Things like that. Then we went to the local level and talked about, our county commissioners. What do they head up? What does the city council head up? Then we went to the statewide level. So we talked about, Commissioner of Labor, all those different types of things. And then we went to the federal level, of course. So we're talking about, the presidency. Well, we didn't get too far in the weeds with that. We just wanted general kind of conversation around what those topics, like what those are. Very much so. Very much so. YWCA is a nonpartisan organization. Just heads up. But so we had the conversation around that, and it was so fun because people got super competitive.
Yeah.
But a lot of people learned things. They were like, "Oh, I didn't realize that we used to see Sherry Berry in the elevators, right?" Now, Sherry Berry is a part of the commissioner. She was the commissioner of labor at the time.
Okay.
And so
in Charlotte, or
just for statewide.
Oh, statewide. Okay.
And so she manages all the elevators. We see Sherry Berry on the elevator. Sherry Berry stopped appearing, but everybody knew who Sherry Berry was. But that was an office that she was elected into, and so things that people didn't realize that. So there are people literally on everyday basis, things that you're doing, that is connected to who you're putting in office at the time. So it just things like that. So it was fun.
Love it. And I love the gamification again, because I think we have to be more innovative and creative when we have these discussions. It just can't be, a one-way dialogue of you do this. I mean, I definitely like the two-way approach, but then really to create a game so that people can learn details. Now, did you have people who were a little skeptical of the trivia? Because, you have some game people and you have some people who are not game people.
Yes. we had a mix.
Okay.
But by the end, everybody was trying to win.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Okay.
We had winners, but
Okay.
the competition was real.
Okay. I love that. I love that. And then that is also capturing our young voters again, in that vein. So with that, I wanted to ask, this question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you feel young voters find promising about the voting process or challenging
That's a good
about
question.
the voting process?
Ooh, child. Oh, Lord. Like I said, we've been rocking with the Smith students for a few weeks.
Okay.
And I think we've heard a lot more of the challenges than the promise, like the promising kind of pieces, but we've been trying to kind of level that out a bit. But from terms of challenges, I know sometimes transportation can be just getting to the polls.
Yeah. It's a challenge.
It's a challenge. Knowing how to check their status. We literally took about 20 minutes with students just so they know where to check their status at for the registration status. So looking at the North Carolina Board of Election, if they're registered here.
Yeah.
Another challenge related to transportation and registration status is, we have a lot of out of town students. If you're from Maryland or you're from, I don't know, Houston, Texas, are you going to vote there?
Yeah.
Creating a plan is a challenge for them. And social media and what's being kind of spit out.
Yeah.
Is it real information? Is it fake information? So them trying to kind of comb through what's real and what's not real when it comes to information around candidates and different policies that they're speaking about is difficult as well. So they have a challenge that's unlike challenges maybe the boomers might have had, or even myself as a millennial. I don't think I had as many challenges associated with social media because social media was kind of like blowing up when I was growing up. But those are some of the challenges, but it's promising because when we had conversations around like the civics piece of it all. So voting is one way to be civically engaged, but even how are you getting engaged in the community? A lot of them, I say it all the time, this generation is beautiful. They're innovative and they're bright. They have so many talents and things that they can share with the world. Why not really have those conversations with them around how they can engage their community using those talents while also voting, because you got to vote at the end of the day. But also going beyond voting, ways that they can use those gifts and talents they were blessed with to move the dial on things in their own communities. So just having those conversations around that too. But it's equal challenges and some promising pieces.
Now, have you also talked about canvassing or, having a different way to, I know that's something that's, pretty old school in terms of canvassing or calling people on the phone or texting. Did you all talk about that as well as other measures to get engaged?
Yeah, I even told them at the end, I was like, now you are educated. You have become educated when it comes to the voting process, kind of what's associated with it and ways you can engage. Now it is your duty to actually go to the group chats. I said, start with your group chat in your phone. Your family group chat. You got the cousins group chat. We had some football players from Smith there, some basketball players from the women's basketball team. And we're like, y'all have these group chats. How are you just sowing a couple seeds in those group chats to get people engaged? So we can start even as small as that. And it's not small. It's like, that's a big deal for some.
Yeah.
When you think about family members who may be like, I ain't voting. Yeah. But you drop maybe the link for the North Carolina Board of Election there just so they can check their status.
Yes.
You're sowing a seed there.
Yes.
So it may not be as quote unquote big as I'm going to go canvas or I'm going to do 100 postcards tonight. And I'm going to call 30 million people tonight. It may not be that, but it is a big deal. And it's a way for us to make sure they understand that every little piece counts.
Yeah.
And using those talents too.
And those small steps lead to big impact.
I'm telling you, yes.
So
snowball.
I love that. I love that. One question that I have, and it's actually my final question. You mentioned it earlier around this election for women and moms. And I said it's serious, but it's also a motivating time, I think,
is.
for women in this space.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts you'd like to share just around the motivation that,
Yeah.
women have and moms have
Yeah.
around the election process this season?
Yeah. I think back to just the history that women have. When
Fannie
it
Lou
comes Fannie Lou Hamer, I think of my sorority. I'm a member of
Yes.
Delta Sigma Theta. and-
Okay, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority
I didn't
Incorporated
mean to
over
laugh
here.
so loud in there, but I had to throw that out there. I know we got two great sororities here.
Look, we're
You
at
know?
HBCU Love and
Always.
Divine Nine. up in
Divine
here.
Line Love.
Yes.
But I think about those organizations that are doing the work, and
Mhm.
specifically with Delta Sigma Theta, our first active service was we
Mhm.
marched in the women's suffrage movement.
Mm,
Or the
yes.
march. And a lot
Yes.
of people don't realize that. And I'm thinking about those women who have really, made a way and have
Mhm.
set the tone for so many different movements. I think of Shirley Chisholm,
Yep.
all of these
Sojourner Truth.
Sojourner Truth.
Seneca Falls.
Okay.
Mhm.
There are so many people. And I love how we're naming groups and people of color, Black women
Mhm.
who are setting the tone and setting the standard when it comes to making movement.
Mhm.
Regardless of how we have these marginalized identities
Mhm.
that society works to literally knock us down because of the identities we hold. But for
Mhm.
some reason, we
Mhm.
continually get up.
Yes.
But we need to rest. I'm looking in the camera that we got to rest.
Self-care.
Self-care. We can't do it all.
Mhm.
But it's a beautiful thing to see Black women a part of the
Mobilized.
movement and
Mhm.
mobilizing. And I think that's motivating in itself.
Mhm.
Whatever organization you're in, whatever kind of work that you're doing, you have the power. It just shows
Mhm.
that we have a level of power that's like no
Mhm.
other. So it's a
Yeah.
magic touch.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
what's been motivating for
Yeah.
me.
And it also just impresses upon the fact that voting is power.
It is.
Like, I just want people to know that if you feel like you don't have any power,
Mm-hmm.
get your power and vote.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
that is power.
Correct.
So, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I would like to end with, Amanda Gorman's inaugural poem, The Hill We Climb,
Mhm.
which focuses on a message of unity.
Yeah.
And it's something that I feel like the world needs right
I
now,
agree.
depending on where you sit in the world. We've definitely had a lot of misfortunes happen, with hurricanes and
Yes.
with lives being lost during this time. So this is like an opportunity where we can talk about unity.
Mhm.
And she says, "For there is always a light. If only we're brave enough to see it. If only we are brave enough to be it."
Ooh.
I know. I was like, we got to have a powerful quote to end this. And
That's
to
so
me,
beautiful.
that was it. And so we're encouraging everyone to be it.
Be it.
Be it. And we believe that you can.
I do.
Yes. So thank you, Jamila, for
Of
joining
course.
in on this conversation.
This was lovely.
Yes.
I
This
love
is
it.
awesome. And so we also just want, again, to thank our Behind the Throne audience for sticking with us and staying with us and asking about our podcast. We appreciate you and we value you for all that you do.
Mhm.
And to listen to this episode and even previous episodes, we invite you to listen to our podcast on all podcast platforms. And so thank you for today and thank you for this time, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Behind the Throne podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our channel and comment below with your feedback. Check out future episodes from us as we discuss motherhood from babies to adults.